All right, what's going on, guys? Let me know if I'm actually live right now. This is my first time going live on YouTube, by the way. So, let me see some things real quick. Yo, what's good? What's going on, Sharon? Specnominous? Is that how you pronounce that? Specto. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try it. What's going on, man? How y'all doing? Didn't you and From Nothing have a debate together? Nah, we never had a debate. We planned like it was kind of like a discussion on whether or not the Mali Empire actually like had some sort of like skirmish with the Portuguese. It wasn't like really a debate. I mean, if you want to call that a debate, I guess. But to me, it was more of a discussion. Okay, okay, that's what's up. Appreciate that, Sharon. You can pronounce them complicated tribal names, but not my name. Man, I can't pronounce them tribal names sometimes. Actually, I should say those ethnic groups. I prefer to say ethnic groups. You funny. What's going on, Wander? Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I don't know if you male or female, so I appreciate that. Yeah. I've been on a journey since college on African history. I guess I'll tell you guys a quick story. When I went to school in Alabama, and one of my professors, it was a class on the history of England, and we were talking about. He pulled out this huge map of the world essentially, and we were talking about like this small little island of Great Britain essentially, and I just couldn't get over the fact that you had this huge continent of Africa, and I literally had no idea like what was going on during that time. When he was speaking about it that time period, and I was just like, it just really took me aback because I'm a person of African descent, so it's just kind of like how do I like not know anything? And I was just like, man, like ain't no way my ancestors were just like twiddling their thumbs. So that's what pretty much started my journey in African history. That was like I want to say 2008, 2009, years ago. What is coming up next for you? There's a lot of things coming up next. I'll be talking about that. I've been rocking with you for some time, bro. I appreciate that. Calico, Williams. What's going on, Cynthia? Right, right. Okay. Me and all my kids love watching the videos, bro. We've had so many conversations. Oh, that's what's up, Ava or Ava. And please forgive me with pronunciations. I'm not the best with that. Um, what's going on, guys? Been watching 2016. Wow, wow, that's crazy. Wow, that's awesome, man. Been watching since 2016. Oh, okay, good. We got a Haitian in here. Okay, cool, awesome. Please, please, if you can, try and stay for the conversation because I got some things to say, man. Please stay. I really want your input too. Keep up good work. I put my kids on you, Doc. Appreciate that. Uncle Unc, appreciate that. So Sharon, you found me in 2020. Cool. Awesome. I guess we'll get started. Hopefully I can get through all the comments. I know this is the first time, so I'll try and read as many comments as I can. Oh, Voodoo 4, okay. Awesome. Hype for the convo. I'm Haitian as well. Good. All right, awesome. Let's go. So we got Haitians in here. Awesome. Please, if you can, stay. I have time, so I would love to stay in chat. Please, Ivan. Please, definitely. Okay, cool. We've been watching a long time too, kid. So how I started actually, like I said, in like around like 2008, 2006, around there. I started my journey on African history essentially. And, after I graduated college, I have a degree in history and I have a master's in social science. After I graduated from college for my bachelor's, I went to the U.S. Dream Academy. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that. It's pretty much like an after school program for kids in like certain areas. Like I think they have one in New York and D.C. I think they have one in L.A. and Philly. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But I was in the one in DC, and I was teaching the kids African history, and I noticed like some of the kids, they had negative views on Africa. So I was just like, man, like if you have negative views about Africa, like you ultimately have a negative view about yourself, like ultimately. And so that's really gonna determine how you navigate the world. So I was just like, man, like that's something I couldn't unsee ultimately. So I was just like, man, like let me try to incorporate African history into popular culture because it's important, man. Because Africa has been denigrated over time. The narrative is that it's a dark continent, dark people, dark history. Ultimately, like that's the undercurrent of Africa. And I'm glad that it's gotten a lot better now. That perspective, I think there's a lot more genuine scholarship who are genuinely curious about Africa and really trying to understand it from a proper historical lens. Um, and I just want to be a part of that movement, if you will. So yeah, that's pretty much short and sweet. Hopefully, my story, just a little bit of it. There's a lot more to it, but I can delineate later if you guys like or interested. Um, okay, cool. So we got like 69 people in here. That's awesome, man. What's going on, Justin? All right, so I believe it was Sharon who asked me what's next. So basically, I've been working. I don't know if you guys heard of Monarchs before. It's a comic that Josh has been working on. Josh is a friend of mine, and we're partnered together, and we're doing this animation thing together. We're really trying to take this channel to the next level. Him and his team, um, and he's the founder of Monarchs, and it's a really cool comic, man. Like I love it. Like it's super original. That's what I appreciate about his work. Like, cause some comics, like some black comics that I see, I don't really get the original vibes. But his was just really original. He said, he's been watching my work, my channel, and it was just like he incorporated some of what I was teaching into his comic, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's amazing. That's one of the reasons why I started the channel to incorporate African history into popular culture. And I was really glad, he told me that. So definitely let me know if you guys ever heard of Monarchs. If you haven't, go follow him on Instagram. I have to get his handle actually. Let me see if I can. You can just go. You can go on Instagram and type in Monarchs. I believe it should pop up. It's called Monarchs Comic. Yeah, here's this stuff right here. It's dope, man. Excellent work. And so I don't know if you guys have been noticing. I've been kind of teasing some animation. I've been showing some animated work. Some of it is like motion graphics. That's what most of it is right now. But we've been doing motion graphics, and we're kind of graduating to animation. Ultimately, I want to go this whole channel full animation. His style is very high quality, and in tomorrow's video, you guys are gonna see that it's gonna be a teaser, but because part of the video is gonna be like full animation, and then you're gonna there's gonna be some motion graphics, but like I want you guys to number one, support his work, support this channel, the new direction that it's heading in, because like I really believe honestly like this can this can skyrocket ultimately with the type of like animation that he has, his capacity, his team that he has. His animation is really good, man. So it kind of reminds me of like Japanese anime. Like the fact that he's able to do that is amazing. It's not too often you see like a, not that we're trying to mimic Japanese animation, but like it's as far as the quality of it. Um, the fact that he can present that kind of quality into this work, I think it's incredible. So, and it's not cheap either. So one of the things I've been pushing as of late is uh I've been pushing my Patreon. So if you support the Patreon, you're supporting the animation, you're supporting the new direction of this channel. So let me get to the chats here. My brother married an African girl because of me introducing him to your channel years before COVID. That's what's up. You're gonna make history come alive. I appreciate that, man. Thank you. All right, yeah. Let me get to the topic. Ultimately, what did y'all, before we get to that? What did y'all think of the Uganda video or the Uganda news about them finding like trillions of I guess gold deposits or um, my last video if you guys have seen it? Because there was somebody, I believe he said he was, from Uganda. And he was just like, we're not really excited about that. Like nobody's excited about it over here. Like he seemed pretty skeptical about the whole thing, which I can definitely understand because you know how modern Africa is with owning and controlling their resources. Ultimately, like that's a big thing. Africa is a really young continent, and I feel as though I really wish I can sort of like rewind back to the days of Thomas Sankara and all those leaders. And I really want to like take a temperature of like what it was like, what were people feeling? Because the stuff that Ibrahim Traore is doing, I don't know, to me it just feels different to me. Like the energy feels different. It feels as though there's a lot of young people behind them. There's a lot more. I don't have the words right now, to be honest. It's all I can say right now is it feels different with Ibrahim Traore, and it's really kind of nerve wracking to me because he really seems like he's about that, to be honest. And it's crazy how like history in a way is repeating itself because Thomas Sankara, he was from Burkina Faso as well. So Burkina Faso has is really interesting because you had the Maasai people who were really obstinate against the rise of Islam because a lot of the Muslim African nations or empires were essentially trying to conquer the Maasai territory, and they resisted through and through, and they had many successes doing so. And I don't know how that necessarily ties into Burkina Faso, but I guess I feel like modern day Burkina Faso, but I guess I feel like they're keeping the same kind of energy, like these people resist, man. They have a lot of pride in their nation and who they are, and they want to stay true to their African self, their African selves. I guess that's the connection or parallel there that I'm trying to make. Um, uh, you remind me of Ryan Coogler. Interesting. Okay, that's what's up. Yeah, that's great news if it benefits people of Uganda. Yeah, that's a big if. I noticed you capitalized that. The Namibian president is another good one to watch. Really? Okay. I gotta look at that. Justin says, unfortunately, my first thoughts were negative. How other nations will try to take advantage of the discovery. It already seems like so glad to finally see the face behind the videos. Appreciate that, Afro Carib. My mom is Jamaican, by the way. I see that you're a Canadian, Ghana and Jamaica. I don't know if that's where you're from, or you just represent. I don't know. Um, Your channel has taught me specifically regarding Africa to wonder what came before the more well-known historical moments. That there's always something before that eventually brings us all back. Can we call bro L? I've been thinking about that to be honest. I'm not on that level yet because I have this potato camera here. So I'm trying to. I've never done a live before. It's my first live, so I'm gonna try and get more acclimated to the system, if you will, and improve my lives as well as my videos in general. But I would love to do call-ins. Honestly, I really would. I have no idea how to do that, so I'm gonna look it up and we can take it to the next level. I would love to do that, honestly. Been watching you for years. So much. All right, yeah. I'm sorry. I gotta kind of talk about the topic. I appreciate the support, guys. Could we do call-in soon? But then you can do more. Yeah, right. Okay. Um, yeah. So I forgot what I was saying, man. Uh, Again, this is my first live, so forgive me if there's any hiccups, which there are already. But yeah, so what was I saying? We briefly talked about Uganda and the gold. Yeah, some of you guys were skeptical about it. I can totally understand that. Ultimately, Africa is a young continent, man, and I feel like that's changing the game. This particular generation of Africa is going to change the game, in my personal opinion, because I think the continent has the youngest people on the planet. Don't quote me on that, but I think Africa is the youngest continent, I believe. Maybe you guys can ask Chat GPT or something like that or Google. So anyway, so what religion are you guys? Because I made a post about that a while back. It seems like you guys, I let you guys vote and everything. It seems as though you guys really responded well to that because you were interested in the Sinners movie, but you really engaged that post a lot. Um, so I'm really interested to hear what do you believe, and I'll tell you what I believe as well. Ultimately, like it's not like some one way street. My paternal grandmother used to talk about her. I love your channel. I see a lot of videos on ancient Egypt. What's your thoughts on Africanness? Oh, okay, Aiden, we getting right into that. I can talk about all that. Since my first live, I won't be all over the place, guys. But Aiden said, I love your channel. I don't see a lot of videos on ancient Egypt. What's your thoughts on its Africanness and its race debate? Would be interested to hear your views. And Africa is the youngest continent. Yeah. Um, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, but Aiden Bailey. So when I first came to YouTube, I noticed it seemed to me that a lot of people were kind of focused on Egypt, and I wanted to like kind of do something different and focus more on West and Central Africa. More so where we directly come from. But ancient Egypt, I consider it 100% an African civilization. Yes, I believe there were black people. I believe with big civilizations like that had a lot of resources, that had a lot of power, had a lot of influence, it attracted a lot of different people coming in from the Middle East, the Mediterranean world, and all that, especially in the northern Egypt area. And I can talk about this later, but I believe the Egyptian civilization was centered around that sort of line between southern Egypt and northern Nubia. So, like northern Sudan, modern day northern Sudan, southern Egypt, and people from the Western Sahara. That sort of highway, if you will, coalesced into the Egyptians, in my personal opinion, from what I can tell. And they created the Egyptian people, who, in my opinion, were black people ultimately. So that's my viewpoint. And then they spread up into northern Egypt, and northern Egypt seems to me to be a little bit more diverse. But yeah, that's why you get a diversity of phenotypes and even colors sometimes, and depending on what region of Egypt you go to. So depending on where you're looking. And we can debate about that too, if you guys disagree, whatever. I'm sure a lot of people. Yeah. Anyway, no religion, I believe. Thanks for answering the question. Appreciate that. All right. So no religion, Sub-Saharan Africa. I'm non-religious. Derek, just so you know, your channel platform essentially to the Senkoa process on I raised my daughter on Haitian history. It stands. Wow. That means a lot to me, man. I appreciate that. What do you think of History Debunked channel? I don't know. I don't know who History Debunked is. Maybe you can send me his stuff. Left Christianity 8 years ago. I moved spiritually now. Still learning. Cool. It's weird to try to take a country from a continent. So yeah. All right. Yeah, I hear you. RDLY, Kemet, we didn't call it Egypt. I agree. That's how most people understand it today. So, I guess I want to talk to the modern populace. May I give an honest critique? Absolutely, definitely. What? Please, free reign. Landmark 22. All right, yeah, I can't. I gotta focus. I know I'm all over the place, but I'll try and peep your comment, Landmark. So yeah. So from the post that I made, a lot of you were Christians. A lot of you, from the I don't want to say Christians. A lot of you were from the Abrahamic religions because that's how I displayed it. So Abrahamic meaning Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So I didn't delineate which specifically you guys were, but I figured that was going to be most people. A lot of you guys said you were generally just spiritual. which is cool. Some of you said you incorporated some African spirituality into your own personal spiritual beliefs, which I also think is pretty dope. So yeah, I grew up Christian. I profess Christianity today. I believe in. I'm a Christian. Um, the thing is though, like if I were to actually tell you I'm more of like a liberal Christian. I would say if I were to actually tell you my beliefs, like say a fundamentalist Christian would be like, oh no, you're a heretic or you're not really Christian. So I'm that type of Christian, if you will. So I'm more of a open system type of Christianity type of dude. British YouTuber who's very scrutinizing of African history. Okay, I think somebody was mentioning. I think that's relation to history debunk dude. Okay, you have great voice, especially for media. I think more inflection with your delivery would be great. More inflection with my delivery. Okay, you mean pronunciation, or I guess pronunciation and inflection are two different things, but more enthusiasm, or I'm not sure exactly what you mean precisely. What do you make of Christianity? Would you say it's Roman religion? Oh shoot, y'all going. Okay. All right, but let me let me try and stick to the topic as much as I can. I'll try and touch on that as well. There's a lot of questions here and insight. Okay, so I'll tell you one of my experiences in general. Like, I guess when I became more of a, I guess a liberal Christian, as I would call it. I was having a lunch with a friend of mine. What am I saying? Okay, this was an individual that I love very, very much. I wouldn't say we're friends. It's complicated. Anyway, I'm not gonna get into that. It's an individual I love very, very much, and we were just it was in like a group setting, and we were kind of just talking about the plight of Black people, and it was in the context of religion as well. Like religion was the undercurrent, Christianity specifically, and we were just kind of like she was just kind of bemoaning the fact of you know, African people seem to be going through so much in every country on the planet, essentially. And she was just like she ended it with like, yeah, well, maybe we are cursed pretty much. And that really that took me aback. I was like, whoa, because the curse of Ham narrative is always, in my opinion, been an undercurrent within Christianity, and I feel like the, the way it was presented to me was like, oh, this is just nonsense. It's a misnomer. Got it. That's kind of the position I always held. And through my own research, that's what it seems to be, a misnomer or whatever, like that particular belief. I wouldn't say Christians genuinely believe that ultimately. The problem is, it has been utilized to, justify enslaving Black people. And that's been an undercurrent that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. So, like, this idea that you're cursed or whatever, it keeps you enslaved. Ultimately, it keeps your mind enslaved. So there's that. And so to me, that manifested itself in a conversation. And I know she's not the only one. It's just if you're a Christian, I feel like it's you may not pay attention to it, but when it comes up, it kind of comes up. And I think as Black people, we kind of sidestep it a little bit. I don't recall us engaging it really at all. It's kind of like just kind of swept under the rug in a sense and dismissed very quickly, which I get. I mean, I guess, but yeah, that was crazy. So that's what took me out of this. I would say fundamentalist Christian perspective because I'm just like, I mean, why is this narrative there to begin with? Number one, and I just kind of did my own research on it pretty much. But yeah, there is this. I always had this cognitive dissonance when it came to African history. I mean, African spirituality as a Christian, ultimately. And I don't know if you guys ever felt that way as well. If you guys were Christian or grew up Christian, and the only reason this is Christian centric is because I know a lot of people in North America, especially, we come from a Christian background. If we're not Christian, our family were Christian in the past. Like, let's be real. So yeah, so ultimately, I did have cognitive dissonance about because like I mentioned before, my mother she's Jamaican and she used to send me to Jamaica all the time. Like her family's from like the mountains, so like I don't want to say they're isolated, but they're kind of isolated or whatever. So like as a child, I always had this impression that like, man, like these people, they're different. Like I could tell like they came from Africa, and I didn't know much about Africa, but I just knew it was just kind of like something instinctual. Like I knew like these are African people. Um, and there in Jamaican culture, there's Africanisms, as you would say, within it, and it's really demonized. If you're a Christian, it's demonized. It's duppy stuff. It's demonic, yada yada yada. And that's the Christian narrative. And so growing up, I had this cognitive dissonance or whatever. Like, okay, these are my people. This is how they view God. This is how they view the spiritual world or whatever. Why is it? Why do they have to be demonic? And it just kind of followed the narrative of dark continent, dark people, dark history, pagan, demon. You're associated with that. You're going to hell. Yada yada yada. And I don't know if you guys, if I'm preaching to anybody, if you guys have a similar experience, but yeah, I know you guys are, are talking a lot in the comments. Just I'm missing a lot, but just gonna try and keep talking. So yeah, and this is gonna lead to the Haitian Revolution and African spirituality, and I'll get to some comments now later. I mean, I'm all over the place, man. This is my first time, so forgive me. So yeah, so that's when like I really tried to. So I had this cognitive dissonance when it came to African spirituality. To me, African spirituality growing up was just something I stayed away from. Obviously, it was the undercurrent was that it's demonic ultimately, and you shouldn't engage African spirituality at all. Um, and so when I started researching African spirituality more, it seemed a bit different than how it was advertised to me. African spirituality, first of all, it's very difficult to understand African religion through like the literature because Africa has been so denigrated over time that like if you think African history is, distorted, African religion is the worst in the literature. Like they really don't know what they're talking about. I'll say that. And so, how I was able to understand African spirituality, just some semblance of it, was by reading African philosophical works. That in this book right here, this book really helped me. I'm only just now starting to unpack a lot more of African religion and spirituality. If you guys have the opportunity, please, I don't know if you guys can see it. Um, Please get this book, A Companion to African Philosophy. It really orients you into the scholarship on African philosophers, and they talk about African religion, and it'll give you such a solid foundation into understanding African spirituality and the mind behind it ultimately. And that's where, yeah, that's where I started talking about African religion more. I didn't have much confidence in talking about African religion because it was just so distorted until I started reading African philosophical works from African philosophers themselves. So I would say personally, in order to understand African religion to get a solid foundation, you got to go through African philosophy first. This is my personal opinion. That's what really helped me understand it, like ultimately. Anyway, so I did this video, Sinners, and I don't know if Ryan Coogler was trying to do this on purpose. Like I said in the video, I don't know if you guys saw the video, but like I think that what one scene really instantiates the essence of African spirituality, and I don't want to say African meaning the whole continent. What I'm talking about specifically is West Africa, ultimately. West and Central Africa, kind of like the Niger Congo spiritual systems and divinity systems and belief systems, the Niger Congo language family. So basically, West and Central Africa. I'm not talking about the whole continent, just the Niger Congo, which is a lot of the continent. Anyway, so from my understanding, the African spiritual system is sort of like is more of an open, results based system. And that's a key word, results based. Um, man, you guys are really commenting a lot. I apologize about the comments. I wish I can get to all of them, but I'm just keep talking. I'm new to this live thing, so please forgive me. Um, so okay, yeah. So African spirituality and religion is really an open, in my opinion, it's an open, results-based system from what I see, specifically from the Niger Congo family, African ethnic groups. So Niger Congo meaning people from all the way from Mali, Senegal, all the way to like Angola, that whole region. I guess Namibia as well, whatever you want to call Niger Congo. Um, so it's an open results based system, guys, and that's what my video Sinners was kind of touching on. Like in the scene, oh man, I don't know if you guys seen the movie, so I don't want to give away anything. How about that? Anyway, so yeah. But in the movie, there's a scene that, in my opinion, instantiates that. You can go watch the video I did on the Sinners. But basically, it's an open results based system, and actually, oh, okay. So somebody, I gotta read this, I guess. There's some laws that I see that people do. I guess a super chat. I appreciate that. M Hadsel. There's no African religion that's been exposed to the whole of Africa. So how would we even know where to start? I'm Angolan, like you. Yeah, I don't know if you heard me, but I kind of touched on that. Like what I'm talking about specifically are the Niger Congo, African divinity systems or African religious systems. Some people don't even want to call it religion. They call it spirituality. Um, that's what I'm saying. Like in the literature, when it comes to African religion, African spirituality, it's all over the place, man. Like it's very difficult to narrow down and to pin down. I'd say it's a nebulous thing, and that's why I say personally, you had to go through African philosophy first to even touch African spirituality or religion, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, I agree. There's no African religion that's been exposed to the whole of Africa. I totally agree. So I think, yeah, you need to go piecemeal. I would say, don't go to individual ethnic groups. Learn the divinity systems or the spiritual ideas of the language groups of Africans, because there's going to be different forms of it. There's diversity, like depending on which ethnic group you go. But if they're from the Niger Congo language group, it's going to be the same system. If they're from the Nilo-Saharan group language group, it's going to be pretty much the same system. So I would say go to the language group and learn as best you can their system, but you got to go through again African philosophy first. So yeah, so I appreciate that comment, Hadsel. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that properly. Anyway, so what does the open results based system mean? The Yoruba have a proverb I've written down here. They say that where there is no man, there is no divinity. Where there is no man, there is no divinity. And I'm really curious what you guys think about that proverb. I have some thoughts on it. So I got that quote, by the way, from this book, because there's an African philosopher, and these are African authors, by the way. There's an African philosopher in here who touches on this, and he talks about the Yoruba proverb that says that. So the Yoruba proverb says, "Where there is no man, there is no divinity." If you guys have time, definitely let me know your thoughts on what you think that means. We have ultimately been animism. There's some scholars who hate that word animism, by the way. Religion can be forced on other people, just like what empires do. Spirituality is personal or family affairs and will not be exported. That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. I like that perspective. Okay, watching the Hawks. Haitian spirituality allow the people to self-conscious and decide what's good for them, not a colonial religion which taught people not to protect. Man, like you giving away this video, man. I appreciate that. Watching the Hawks. All right, so where there is no man, the Yoruba say, where there is no man, there is no divinity. Within the context, I think there are multiple ways to interpret that, but within the context of this book, he's talking about a results-based African spiritual system. So basically, what the interpretation is from this particular African philosopher, again, there may be more interpretations, but his interpretation is that Where there is no man, there is no divinity. Like the Africans are the one who, the Africans themselves, the humans themselves, they have the agency to decide who is worthy of praise, who is worthy of worship. If you don't give me any results, that doesn't mean you don't exist. It just means I'm on to the next one. I need to go what gives me life, what is salubrious for my being ultimately. Um, and that is a sort of African mindset, if you will, or I would say a Niger Congo spiritual mindset. Again, we had to delineate, when it comes to Africa, there's a lot of diverse ethnic groups, languages, and people. We can't say holistically African this or African that. So within the Niger Congo system, the Yoruba say where there is no man, there is no divinity, and it is a results based sort of spiritual form. That's one interpretation. There may be others, but within this book right here, that's where I got it from. You guys can check it out. That's what he's talking about. There's also another Igbo proverb. This is very Nigerian centric, I know, but there's the Igbo proverb that says, "A deity who does as he says never lacks in worshipers." That's interesting. So within the context, it seems as though there's some parallels here. The Yoruba are saying where like if a man doesn't worship the divinity, there's no divinity. Like it's not necessarily that they don't exist. It's just that they're irrelevant. And the Igbo are saying, you know, a deity who does what he says never lacks in worshipers, and that to me kind of goes to like a polytheistic system. Where like, because I was like as a Christian studying Egypt. That's interesting how I like kind of went from West Africa to Egypt. But as a Christian studying Egypt, I was always kind of like, I don't want to say confused. That's not the best word, but I was always like really interested to understand like why different Egyptians like they didn't deny the existence of other like deities. They worshipped based on like their city or based on their town. Whoever was giving them the results, whoever was the more popular deity. And I think outside of Africa, it was a similar system as well. But that yeah, I think that's really interesting. It seems as though throughout many parts of the African continent, it was a results based sort of system. And in West and Central Africa, we can throw in the open system as well. Um, so yeah, so this kind of, and I'll talk about why it's open in a little bit. So, all right, somebody said, can you see? That is why Osun and Ogun are so popular. Yeah. Oh, Dimensioner X said, why would you want to practice not African spiritual systems? Okay, we can talk about that. So all right, let me see what Hatzel says. One thing that kind of deters me from African spirituality is that if we're so divine, how did we get colonized like that? Clearly we were doing something wrong. Any thoughts, guys? No, sir. In my personal opinion, it does not mean that. Those two things don't have to correlate. I think, man, I think that's another topic. There are multiple reasons why the African continent got colonized. In my personal opinion, if you've been with me for a while, you may know that I personally believe through my studies, African diversity was the worst enemy to Africa. African diversity. That was the main thing, number one. If you have a different language, you have a different culture, you have a different worldview, different spirituality, there was no Pan Africanism back then. So it's important to understand that like when a Portuguese man came to, I don't know, Mali and was just like, hey, I'm going to the New World, I want some slaves or whatever. He went to the Mandinka and he was just like, where those slaves at? And the Mandinka, he didn't go to a Mandinka village. He went to the Fulani. He invaded them. And when the the, the Portuguese went to Fulani, he invaded the Mandinka. Like these people had different languages, different cultures, and different and worldviews. They didn't view themselves as one. And it wouldn't be fair to view themselves as one or to expect them to do so. So this is why Africa was, in my personal opinion, swallowed up so quickly. One of the reasons why, for example, one of the reasons why the Portuguese were finally able to take over the Kingdom of Congo or the Empire of Congo is because they aligned themselves with the Mbangala, another African ethnic group. When you read the history of colonialism, you will always see 99% of the time the Europeans were aligning themselves with other African ethnic groups to take out a more powerful African ethnic group. Like it's repeated over and over again. I think that's unassailable, honestly. Like when you actually like read the sources. All right, so I'm getting off track. I don't even know where I was. Okay, so I guess the Igbo, they say a deity who does, as he says, never lacks in worshipers. Somebody said something up here. Hold on, let me see. Okay. Why would you want to practice not? Okay. Yeah, I have to touch on that later. My bad. All right. So this to me, kind of leads us to the Haitian Revolution. And my Haitians, I really want you guys to throw some history in there if you can, or your perspective, a Haitian perspective, if you will. So, okay, what am I trying to say? So with the Haitian Revolution, as a Christian, ultimately, as a Christian, I always heard this narrative that I'm sorry, my voice, guys. Let me get some water. I'm tripping. Okay, yeah. So as a Christian, the Haitian the Haitian Revolution was always, in a sense, the boogeyman. Um, that's crazy. Anyway, yeah, as a Christian, the Haitian Revolution was always, in a sense, the boogeyman. And I don't know if other Christians can relate to this. If you can, please let me know. Like I know I could not be the only island in this, man. But the Haitian Revolution was kind of the boogeyman because the narrative was that the Haitians they used voodoo to take over and to defeat the French. They made the deal with the devil essentially, and that's I would say the Western Christian narrative. Um, and that was always deeply troubling to me, but it was something that I just kind of accepted at face value as I got older and started to sort of deconstruct from a more fundamentalist vision or idea of Christianity, because like I said, I'm a more liberal Christian, if you will. I started to think like, man, like, especially learning more about, African religion, like, okay, if I believe from the sources that I'm reading that African religion or spirituality, whatever you want to call it, is an open, results based system. And you have these Yoruba proverbs saying that where there is no man, there is no divinity. If you ain't doing nothing for me, I ain't gonna worship you. The Igbo saying a deity who does as he says never lacks in worshipers. Like this is their mindset. This is their ideology. So you had these Haitians. These were really Africans at the time, for the most part. These were Africans transitioning into Haitians, if you will, whatever you want to call it. Um, yeah, they had this system that they believed in, and they utilized this system, this spiritual idea, literally to free themselves from the torture of slavery. Like there is nothing more righteous or glorious than that. Like when I started looking at it in a different way, it's just kind of like, how can you then say like voodoo or vodun is like evil or demonic? Now, a Christian in a sort of a apologetic way can be like, oh yeah, of course you can use the devil to free yourself from, or to get your desires met. But I personally reject that because anything Christianity or the Western world or even the anthropologists didn't understand, they have a consistent history of demonizing it. They've been doing that for years. I would say centuries. So that's why personally I reject that sort of apologetic. Well, I'm making that up, but I reject that Christian narrative, if you will, because I'm not so sure that I can just distill the Haitian Revolution to some demonic movement that that freedom from the French. Like that perspective is wild to me because these people were being essentially in hell and cooking in Haiti, and their lifespan was cut short. All manner of hell was being done to them, just like all other enslaved people in South America and the Caribbean and America. And they literally called on a higher power and a higher idea, if you will, a higher spiritual consciousness, whatever you want to call it, and they utilize that to unify them to free themselves. There's no way I can be an honest person and say that's demonic, to be honest, in my personal opinion. So I'm really curious what you guys have to say about that. So somebody was saying like, and okay, so this is the last thing I'm pretty much gonna say, and I'm gonna read comments because you guys are saying a lot. But um so now that's the results based system. Remember the Yoruba, the Igbo, hey, you gotta give us results in order for us to adhere to you ultimately. And these Haitians, many of them Yoruba, many of them Igbo, wherever they were from, the Niger Congo, wherever they're from Senegal to Mali, whatever, Cameroon, this is the Niger Congo spiritual system. We want a results based system. We believe that by worshiping and adhering to voodoo spirituality, we can free ourselves from enslavement. And they were right, period. However, you want to interpret that, they were right. The Haitians were right. So they used their spiritual form to free themselves from enslavement. Obviously, there's a lot of like moving parts with that as well. But the Haitian, I mean, the voodoo ceremony that the Haitians did before the revolution was pivotal. Like these people were broken, many of them. I'm getting emotional even talking about it. Anyway, I don't even want to go there. But they use this to lift their spirits. They use African spirituality to lift their spirits and to free themselves. And it was one of the most I would say it was the most glorious moment of black men and women in history outside of the African continent. And I dare anybody disagree with me on that. The Haitian Revolution was by far the most glorious moment in the history of black people outside of Africa, by far. And I know, some Christians may be obstinate. I'm sorry. I don't want to just like pin this on Christians. I'm sorry. Some people of the Abrahamic faiths or other faiths may be like, well, look at Haiti today, ultimately, because they made that deal with the devil. I've heard that, man. I've heard that so many times. It's crazy. They made that deal with the devil, and that's why Haiti is in shambles today, if you will. Man, there's so many reasons why Haiti is like that. Like we don't need to get into all that. But anyway, I don't see the correlation personally. So yeah, so going to so that's the results based system of African spirituality that many Africans, Niger Congo, I would say, committed to. And the open system is reflected through what's his name, Nat Turner in America. He didn't use voodoo. He used Christianity. He utilized it. He thought, hey, this is my spiritual belief, and I'm going to utilize it to try and form some rebellion. He had different results, but it goes to the open system. Africans are just like the Niger Congo in particular, are just like, hey, well, what are you going to do for me? Because I'll say this. I think when it comes to the idea of purpose for some or many, I would say, of the Niger Congo spiritual systems, it's not that Ogun or Olodumare, tells them how to live morally. Like the moral system or the moral code, the idea of purpose doesn't come from the divine. It comes from within, from the humans. That's the Niger Congo spiritual system. So in the Abrahamic religion, it's reversed. Your purpose, your value, your moral codes, it comes from the divine onto you in a tablet, if you will, or scripture, and it comes to you and you read it as a human, and you have to abide by that. But in the Niger Congo system, it's literally reversed. We are the ones, the humans, that come up with the moral system, and it's the gods who validate it through the results that we get in our lives ultimately. That's sort of the spiritual, I'd say, the spiritual format, if you will, of the Niger Congo belief systems. And that resonated with me in many ways. I guess I can touch on that some other time, but when I read that, it just really hit. Okay, so we have I guess a super chat. I appreciate that, LMA. How do you square Christianity's role in the European invasion and colonization of Africa and your belief in Christianity? Do you believe Africans would be Christian, Muslims, Abrahamic without their invasions? Okay. All right, I'm gonna try and touch it. How do you square Christianity's role in the European invasion and colonization of Africa and your belief? Right, right. So I think Christianity's role was pivotal in the colonization of Africa. They kind of had to colonize their minds first, if you will, not first, but alongside of what they were doing in order to make them more malleable to their colonial rule. How do I square it away? Um, so one of the things, me as a Christian personally, one of the things I like about what Jesus said in particular was he said, love your neighbor as yourself, ultimately. And to me, that was like his golden rule, if you will. Like, I believe the context was like, somebody was like, hey, what's the most important law or whatever? And out of all the laws, he said, love your neighbor as yourself, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. And so how I square that away is, you know, that's what empire does. It utilizes a system that it can to do what it wants to do, whether it's for good or whether it's for evil, if you will. So I think Europeans utilized Christianity. It was a great tool to be able to colonize and to unify Christian people in order to go toward a specific direction, which was colonization. So I personally separate Jesus's teachings and European colonialism. To me, those are two different things. Personally, um, do you believe Africans would be Christians without their invasions? Yes, because so here's the thing: like the Portuguese came to Congo, for example, it was a trade-like relationship. There was no smoke, no smoke yet with that. So it was a trade-like relationship, and over time, the Kingdom of Congo, the King of Congo, he converted to Christianity, and it happened, in my opinion, very naturally. I don't want to say very naturally, but it happened naturally, if you will. So yeah, and the same thing happened in Ethiopia. I believe there was like a Greek. It was a Greek guy who gained access to King Azana's court, I believe. Don't quote me on this. I got to look at my sources. But yeah, he came to his court and he naturally converted to Christianity. Same with Islam. Now Islam invaded North Africa, but Islam came through. Islam trickled down into the Niger Congo regions through the Berbers or the Amazigh. So that I guess happened naturally as well. So I think there's layers to it. I would say that element. Um, so yes, I do believe because Africans have this open system, because it's based on results, Africans will utilize Christianity too. Africans will utilize Hinduism if they need to. But they don't care who the divinity is. I guess that's the Niger Congo, at least. That's not important. What's more important, seemingly, is this results, the results that you get as an individual, as a person. Because in my personal opinion, from what I see, African spirituality or religion, um, it's more about it gives humans more agency than many other religions. I don't want to say many other religions because I don't know many other religions. I'll just say Abrahamic. It gives than the Abrahamic religions. It gives humans more agency. So we're in control of our purpose. Our purpose comes from us, and the divinities put their stamp of approval on it by giving us these little trinkets or success, perhaps. We're in control of our moral codes. Our moral codes as African people aren't ossified, meaning it doesn't stay in place because it was sent from above and a text that doesn't move, that's immutable. It The moral code can change over time based on your environment, based on situations you're going through, circumstances, whatever. It's a living and breathing moral code because it comes from us. So when it comes from a tablet or a text, you're bound by that, bro. Like it says this, you can't move. And I feel like a lot of Christians, a lot of people from the Abraham religions, they may have some cognitive dissonance with that because dealing with new things that arise in technology and just new times, it's hard to make that adjustment if you have this text here that says this and to stay like this because God said this is what the this is why I made you. This is who you are. Yada yada yada. In the African-based open results-based system, humans are given more agency to determine who they are, what their purpose is, what their moral codes will be, yada yada yada, etc. etc. Hopefully I answered your question, LMA. That was satisfactory. All right, guys. So I mean, that's pretty much kind of like what I wanted to touch on. Like, I really appreciate your insight. If you want me to highlight, your question, there's a lot of questions in here. Definitely do the super chat, but I'll try and read some here. Dimensioner said, "Stop practicing non-original African spirituality." Well, I would say that's un-African to even think that way, because it's not about where it originated. Again, it's about what results are you getting. If you're getting results over here, then that's cool. If you're not, then you might need to reevaluate some things. Um, but to each their own. RJ McKenzie, I got a question. Go ahead, shoot away. Christian text is flexible enough. Our minds are just usually behind in limberness. Okay, somebody said, home team, any thoughts on why our Dominican brothers are so hostile to our... how am I supposed to know that? I have no idea. I'm not Dominican. I don't know. I don't know, man. That's an interesting question. Dimensioner, until we stop doing it, things for us won't change. That we can debate that, bro. I'm not really a debate bro type of dude, but we can talk about it. How about that? We can have a discussion. Until we stop doing it, things for us won't change. Okay, I know some people who believe that African our religion as Black people ultimately, like, that's the final frontier that we need to conquer essentially in order to really be free. It seems like you're kind of touching on that. I think that's a good I think that's a fair argument, I would say. I don't know. I don't know. I think personally, people of African descent can utilize whatever is available to them that works. Um, so if it's Christianity, that's what's up. If it's Islam, cool. If it's African spirituality or general spirituality, what's giving you your results? Like the Igbo say, a deity who does what he says never lacks in worshipers. So that was the mindset of the Igbo, at least. So it seemed like they were open. And I feel like that's why Africans were so malleable to different religions that came through Africa. Like, it was easy work to convert an African, if you will. Oh, this is my access to power in this world that's absolutely crumbling. These Europeans are apparently having a lot more power and influence. This is the God they worship. Let me get some of that. Let me see what it does for me ultimately. And they tried it out. I feel that's in Niger Congo mindset. That's Niger Congo spirituality, and I guess that's the point I'm trying to make in this video, in this live. I would say we never believe in those gods. We celebrate nature and life through these images, which unite us. AKA, okay, not sure what that means. You appear to avoid Kemetic spirituality to promote Christianity. Interesting. I don't really know Kemetic spirituality. I think it's similar to the Niger Congo, to be honest. I'm not trying to promote Christianity, and honestly, if it seems that way, I do apologize, because I'm not trying to promote Christianity. I'm just Christian based because my lineage was Christian on both sides, and I know many people in North America are Christians as well, people of African descent. Like, so yeah, to me, I'm gonna have this bias toward Christianity and speaking about it, but I'm not trying to promote Christianity, and I'm not trying to avoid Kemetic spirituality either. I don't really know much about it, but the focus of this live was Niger Congo spirituality. But I do believe Kemetic spirituality is very similar, and I would have to do more research on it, to be honest. But because I focus more on Niger Congo, I mean West and Central, and I know people they want me to talk more about East Africa as well, and I fail you guys in that. But anyway, yeah. Will you do a video on Palo Mayombe? I have no idea who that is, so I'm going to look that up. Palo Moyambe. Is it true Africa's indigenous name was, man, Akbalon? That's one of the most frustrating things that I see, when it comes to people who are interested in Africa. They say, oh, the original name of the continent was Akbalon. Like I said, Africa was diverse. They had many different languages. Like all these different languages aren't going to have one name for the continent. Like it's not possible. Like they had a name for their particular region, but for the whole continent, no, it was not the same name. Like that's one of the things that really irks me, to be honest. So no, Africa's indigenous name for the African continent that we recognize today was not, absolutely not, Alkebulan. And I believe that's actually like an Arab derivative or something like that. I'm not sure. I have to do more research on it. But like there was no Pan Africanism back then. They all spoke different languages. They all had different cultures. One African would call this river something very different from the next African. That was to me, one of the most beautiful things about Africa and one of the most devastating things about Africa because it was hard to have long lasting states that could control their resources ultimately. Like take France before all the people migrated to France and stuff like that. Say the 10th century. Compare that to Nigeria, the modern day country of Nigeria, at least that region. Like today in Nigeria, there's over 200 languages spoken. In France, in the 10th century Nigeria, they spoke over 200. In 10th century France, the indigenous people, I'm saying, how many languages did they speak? Maybe five. I have to look that up, but it's ain't no way it's like 200. Ain't no way, bro. Ain't no way. So yeah, honestly, as far as I can tell, there was no unified name for. Thank you. I could be wrong, but I can't find it. Um, I'm not trying to be hostile, by the way. I'm just, that does kind of irk me when I see that. To be honest, maybe I should do a video on it. I don't know. Oh man, I'm getting behind. Man, somebody speaking Spanish here. Africa means to divide. Not sure about that. Never heard that before. That's interesting. Hey, home team, great. Uh, hey, home team, great to see you. Sorry. Could you ever do videos on Africa during the Neolithic period and how it was as we came out of the Neolithic and established different kingdoms along the Nile? Okay, that's interesting. Let me write that down. Neolithic period. Christianity seems to have us as spiritual prisoners to Neanderthals, and we're very much locked in on it. That's an argument. I think that's a fair argument. The God who told you he had no name, I am that I am, the God of Abraham, whose word has endured. Okay. Zambia has 70 different dialects for land. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's the point I'm making. It comes from the Greek word Afrique, which can be translated as the land that is free from cold and horror, or the land without cold. Interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Nice to meet you. And yeah, it is the only tie. It is the only ties that we have to our truth. I don't know if you're speaking about African spirituality. Yeah, there. I think it's a good argument. Some people say African, spirituality, religion is like the last frontier that we have to get a hold of. Anyone heard of Leo Africanus? I definitely have. LOL, I am that I am. Comes from John Henry Clark. I could belong comes from John Henry Clark. Henry Clark. Shout out to John Henry Clark. I stand on their shoulders, man. Like, I love African history. I consider myself an African history enthusiast. I read a lot on African history. I read other stuff as well, but to get like a broader scope, what I'm trying to do with African history is I'm trying to like zoom out, if you will, and see it from like a bigger perspective, and see all the moving, interconnected parts. Um, yeah, and I think that's how you get as close as you can to a proper historical perspective, in my personal opinion. The problem with religion is not the religion; it's the humans. Oh man, no greater words. Well, well said, man. Guys, I know I missed a lot. Um, I definitely apologize. This is my first live on here. I miss a lot of information. I miss a lot of questions, so I do apologize. Honestly, like I really wish I can just sit here all day and interact. My daughter's sleeping upstairs, and my son, he's gonna want me soon, pretty much. So I only have about like 15 minutes, maybe, because she gonna be screaming. Trust me. So I apologize if you hear that, by the way. Home team. Palo Mayombe is an Afro-Caribbean religion with roots in Congo. Dope. It involves invoking spirits of the dead in Kitas for personal gain and making offerings to Orishas. Huh. So it seems like to be a blend of Congo spirituality and Yoruba spirituality. Interesting. See, that's where Christians would be like, whoa, whoa, the dead. Um, I mean, I understand, the hesitance to that. um, but again, the African spiritual beliefs are like, whoever's giving me results, that's worthy of worship, ultimately. Now, again, that's where maybe Christianity may have a good argument. They can say, well, what kind of spiritual forms are we invoking? We don't know or understand what's really out there. So, what are you invoking really? Um, I don't know. But again, I'm more of a liberal and Christian, and I'm open. My like I said, if I were to actually tell you my beliefs in Christianity and this, that, and the other, like a fundamentalist would be like, bro, you definitely not Christian. Some of you would probably be like, nah, you don't really sound like a Christian, bro. How can people say Christianity is white man's religion when most people in the Bible are brown? Some people are so traumatized. Can you do videos about North African Jews besides Ethiopian? Can you do videos about North African Jews besides Ethiopian Jews? So interesting. Okay. North African, like modern North African Jews, or because there were Jews in the past, in medieval times. So I'm not sure. Yeah, if you can be more specific. Jewels, appreciate the love, man. I love your videos. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. They trying to connect Haiti and Dominican relations. First time catching you live. Great channel. Appreciate that. Appreciate that. I have watched your videos for several years, and I appreciate the breadth of the African subject matter that you cover, as well as the way in which you have begun to cite sources. Yeah, yeah. One of the reasons why I started citing sources was because people were saying, "Oh, you lying," or people were like in the comments, trying to debunk me and stuff like that, which is cool. Definitely feel free to do so. I'm definitely open to any information. Like, just cite the sources. Like, anyway, so that's why I started citing sources. Like, hey, look, if you disagree with it, like, this is where I got like my sources. Like, I mean, you can do with that as you will. If you disagree, cite your own source. Every slave rebellion involved Christianity failed. Most slave rebellions that dealt with African spirituality were successful. I gotta take that in, James, because I think that may be true. To be honest, I think that may be true. Yeah, that's because there's when okay, so when I like to me the only successful slave rebellion was Haiti. I think there was one other one, and it was involving a ship. I did a video on it a long time ago. But the only one I would count as the only successful slave rebellion was the Haitian Revolution. But there were slave rebellions, if you will, by like the Maroons. Like they would leave their plantations, go into the mountains, and they would have this semi quasi successful state, if you will, that the Europeans could not penetrate, and it took them quite some time to penetrate. And so when you have a lot of lack of resources and stuff like that, and you're in a state of privation constantly, like it's hard to survive in the mountains. Like it's very difficult. But the fact that they were able to do that for so long, I'd say that's successful. Like they were maroon settlements like that lasted for decades. So personally, I would say that's successful, and I assume they had spiritual beliefs, and I assume that those spiritual beliefs were not Christian. So I definitely accept that statement, James. Appreciate that. Hebrew ain't African. Well, here's the thing with that. So I believe not I believe scholar Christopher Everett, he points out that the Semitic language, I believe Hebrew is Semitic. Yeah, the Semitic language is like literally branched off of the they call it Afro-Asiatic. Some people call it Afro-San. Semitic branched off of Africa, so uh, it's a derivative. Hebrew is a derivative of an African language family. So yeah, I would say Hebrew is technically a branch of African. I guess it depends on how you look at it. Sephardic Jews, he's talking about they've been in North Africa. Okay, man, my voice is. The questions they ask about other spiritual practices can be asked about Christianity, but they think there's there is the only one that matters. Home team history. I think Black North African Jews. Okay. Well, in order that you are not lying. That is Steve Harvey on your part. Okay. Are you going to have a VOD or make a video about vid or make a video about the subject? Miss some of the convo. Oh man. Well, I think when I get off, like YouTube is just gonna have it on the platform, and you can just you can watch it. Maybe I should make a video. Maybe. Man, I'm missing a lot. Again, this is my first live, guys. I apologize for any hiccups. There were several. I'm gonna definitely try and do this more often and engage with you guys. And I'm also trying to promote this new direction the channel is going with animation, man. That's important because Josh, man, he's doing great work. He has some really good quality animation, and I really wanted to, yeah, I really want this channel to go in that direction because it's just good quality stuff. You guys deserve quality. So, anyway, home team history: Jews from Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya who live, and of course, Jews expelled from Britain during the Middle Ages until their expulsion from those countries to Israel. That's an interesting topic. I don't know. That's a tough one because, like, I guess I would focus on the Berber Jews because my channel is for African people and people of African descent. So hold on one second, Mama. All right, guys. Hey, look, I had to go. My mom is here actually. But look, it was real. We've been on air for about an hour. I appreciate the support. Look, like support the Patreon on um support the home team on Patreon because we're moving to the next direction, man. We're really gonna get things to a way better quality. You guys deserve full animation. You guys deserve a way better quality videos in general. So yeah, I'm trying to take this to the next level with my team. They're doing excellent work. I appreciate the support. I have some big news as well about what I'm, doing right now. Um, so yeah, man, it was cool hanging out with you guys. I'm gonna do many more lives. Thanks for supporting and hopping on. I appreciate you guys. All right, I'll see you soon. Peace.